I'm live. Can everyone hear me? There's a little bit of a lag on the video, as I'm sure you can see. Lag on the stream. All right. So, how's everyone doing? I should be going through a decent mic. Let me check very quickly. So I know it's been a bit funny with it sometimes. There we go. Okay, it's going through the right one. Alright. So how's everyone doing? Also, feel free to share this. Okay. Thanks, Stephen, for telling me. Today we're going to talk about maybe not so much the debate itself, but the sort of paradigm that I saw in this debate on Matt Fradd's channel, on a debate about young Earth creationism between... I'm sure many of you know who Jimmy Akin is. He's one of the apologists from Catholic Answers. And there's also another guy called Byzantine Scotist, otherwise known as Gideon Lazar, who is more up and coming. And they've debated young Earth creationism, as you can tell from the title. And while the debate was itself interesting, and there were some mistakes, I think, on the part of Akin, like serious mistakes, like with consensus patrum, like he seems to think this is disciplinary when it's actually doctrinal. I think that what was much more interesting was watching Jimmy kind of dealing with a beast that he's never really come across. Because I think that some people here will probably be able to relate. There's the old Catholic Answers crew, these veteran apologists who basically cut their teeth in a time that's very different to ours. They began in the 1990s. So they were dealing more with evangelicals and a sort of an evangelical civil religion in the US. So you had this attitude of the Bible and I'm sure I don't have to explain to you. And a lot of the Catholic Answers kind of apologetics centers around those sorts of things. In fact, I think it was even started responding to tracts from these people. Nowadays, you have somebody like a Byzantine Scotist who comes about in a much, much different environment. And I think that everyone can relate to that. And that is a much more segregated view, I think, in a way segregated by algorithms and segregated by the internet, a much less Christian world, a world that's very much secular, like more secular than in the mid-2000s when the atheists were doing their thing. But also something that's not without religion either. It's got the civil religion in the form of progressivism in a very abstract kind of way. And you can see these mindsets kind of clash, I think, in this. Like, I watch Jimmy Akin quite a lot. I like watching Mysterious World. I think it's interesting. But I've never seen him ever... And I've watched him a lot. I've never seen him as intense and as confrontational in a debate, or in any context ever, like that debate. The way that he was facing off against Byzantine Scotist, I'll just call him Gideon, was quite interesting, and I think he was kind of afraid. Maybe. But that doesn't mean that that I agree with Gideon's position either. I'm just saying that it was interesting to see how he responded. Gideon's view took a lot of the I've heard the argument about like a lot of these arguments for the young Earth creationism. Maybe I won't say it's like an old. I was thinking I could say, well, it's old young Earth creationism arguments from Stones and like the geological record, but you don't tend to hear the likes of Ken Ham or Kent Hovind, who were more, I suspect that Jimmy Akin is probably more used to culturally. You don't see them go consensus of the fathers on Catholic apologists. It's kind of a harder argument to deal with because that's our thing. But at the same time, like, watching Akin... I don't know if Akin has realised this. I don't know if this is even true. I actually think it's true. The world has changed quite drastically since Catholic Answers started. And there needs to be some sort of adaptation, I think. Because the sorts of arguments that do indeed work on... I think they still work on evangelicals, right? It's becoming relevant to less and less people. But, although I'm saying that to Akin, I think that Akin has got a much... Like, in terms of apologetics, he's got a much bigger leg over somebody like Scotist, right? Who, you know, he's somebody who's in the Discord communities that I'm in. He knows people that I know. But he's in this kind of strange place on Discord and on Twitter and on YouTube, where people basically just dive into the fathers and dive into the medieval theologians, and there doesn't really seem to be much of a connection between the outside world. I say this because I'm kind of in that way of thinking as well. And so you end up with highly complicated debates over things that the average person would consider to be minutiae, first of all, and second of all, the standard of opinion is a lot more intense than it is in the outside world. And I think that there was a comment on the stream that really exemplified this. Also, if you want to ask unrelated questions, this is just more of a casual stream, as I'm sure many of you can tell. So if I share my screen... I've been using a Mac for work, so I'm kind of a little bit weird with the scrolling. Okay. Hopefully it'll render. I pray it renders. Yeah, it didn't. Okay, yeah, I use Brave, and Brave sometimes breaks down with OBS. For some reason it won't record it, so I'll just read it out. I just have to find it first. So if you've got questions, of course, I'll just answer them on the go. This is probably not gonna stay up for that long. Somebody states rather bluntly, this debate was an utter embarrassment for the Catholic faith. Under no circumstances should it have been carried out. That it has been publicly aired verges on scandal, which is rather blunt, and he's received a lot of comments decrying him. Of course, Matt Frad, who hosted the debate, kind of plays it off a little bit. But this is something that I thought was a really interesting observation. Seriously though, what was the point of getting together two non-experts in the field to try and adjudicate such a question? Surely you saw the caliber of the comments in the sidebar. Any non-Catholic reading them would mock. Geocentrism? Seriously? Listen man, I once listened to you interview Father Nicanor Ostraco on your program. Why on earth wouldn't you have him on instead of all people Jamaican and Gideon Lazar? And why is it worth having debates like this on a subject which is academically and theologically settled? This is a serious protest. These are dark days. We cannot waste our time on nonsense such as this. You can and have done better. Now, it's all right to have theological speculation, but I think he does raise a good point. Why would we discuss things like this, which are like the minutiae of minutiae, things that are evidently the realm of theological opinion in public, when we know that the entire society outside of our very little groups is extremely hostile to any sort of conception of young earth creationism, with the exception of a few evangelicals. It strikes me, although I will say that it seems like Matt Frad is more on the side of the right wing, which would have more people like this. It seems to me to be a real problem. It doesn't seem to me to be very practical to be discussing such things. And so, much more than simply just discussing this stream in isolation, I want to actually talk a little bit about the way that I see apologetics generally turning out. I might actually rename this. I might make this a video. Because I think that basically, and this debate kind of exemplifies it. Maybe not this debate, but I would say the apologists at large kind of exemplify this. We're fighting the wrong enemy. while we're discussing something that is culturally toxic, is considered by the culture to be toxic, while we're discussing this openly, we're not going to be touching people. And this is something that I kind of observed as I was thinking through this, because Catholic Answers tapped into something very real in the 1990s, or even in the 80s, I can't remember exactly when it was set up, in that it dealt with the overarching civil religion of the country. It approached evangelicalism and addressed it. And then I realised that there was another figure that also did basically the same thing, and extremely successfully as well, and I'm sure you've all heard of him, Blessed Fulton J. Sheen. Blessed Fulton Sheen had a show in the 1950s and 60s where he was very much in the kind of the zeitgeist. Of course he was Catholic, but he was very much communicating with the mainline Protestant civil religion of the US of his time. He was non-controversial. You know, it's a wonder that in the US, a country which is known for its flagrant anti-Catholicism in some places, that Fulton Sheen was so viewed. Like, he was so watched. He was so loved by many people. And it's because he understood this civil religion, I think, and I think that's why Catholic Answers may have been successful with people. But we don't really have anything like that nowadays. And that's because I don't think that we're addressing the right enemies. I think we're stuck fighting an enemy that was prevalent in the mid-2000s and is no longer present. There's a lot of arguments about the existence of God. There's a lot of arguments about, finer points about scientism. There are a lot of debates about, rationalistic issues, which made more sense in the 2000s. But the trouble is that the society at large is, and I'd say this has been the case since the early to mid-2010s, has not been a society that operates on such a civil religion. The overarching civil religion, and by the way, when I say civil religion, I mean like the esoteric, the exoteric aspect, the exterior way which people construe themselves morally, the values that they hold, even to some extent maybe rituals that are performed, and communities. It's not. These aren't the days of Dawkins anymore, or Dawkins as we understand him. This isn't the days of religion bad in the same way. We're dealing with the progressives, and nobody on the Christian side seems to be dealing with them that I'm aware of. I could very well be wrong in this. We're still fighting the same battles, I think. People are still talking about proofs for the existence of God. People are still talking about, logical proofs, and these things are all well and good for theological speculation and for understanding what you believe in yourself. But it's not dealing with the central problem. This is what I think that someone like, if Scotist, like Byzantine Scotist, I don't know if you're watching this, I don't know what exactly you're most interested in, whether you're interested in apologetics or theology, like just in itself, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with disputing things theologically. Granted, I don't think maybe Matt Fradd's was the best place to do it, but I think if there's going to be apologetic moves, it needs to be bearing in mind the overarching culture, particularly of the US, and it's no longer evangelical. It's no longer even this kind of weird, new atheism. It's progressivism. I've just seen a bunch of comments here from Andy. One thing which Fradd is big on is trying to foster love between Catholics who have different views where views are allowed. That we should not be belittling others because they practice their Catholicism differently. Yes. I suspect that was why Gideon and Akin were chosen, because they're both polite and agreeable men. I think they both did well on this point. I actually thought that the debate was quite intense, actually. I'm not sure I saw that. But the comments section showed how so unloving many Catholics can be, and how we wish to fight and to dominate others. Yes. I mean, this is typically the case with comment sections. But I think this speaks to a. This is actually another reason. Okay, let me think. So you have this situation with contemporary Catholicism. You have a lot of people who are ex-atheists, a lot of people who are maybe, associated with different, rationalists. Maybe, I certainly find myself from that perspective. These people that are concentrated in myopic internet communities, and because of the nature of society nowadays, it is hard to break out of them. When I said about the progressive civil religion, it's not as strong as something like the mainstream mainline Protestant civil religion of the 1950s, because the internet algorithms segregate us. But it's still there, and we're still isolated. But the thing is that the internet makes it possible to sort of stay away from those things, and that warps people, and it leads to, I hate to say it, I suppose, it's echo chambers, right? And so I feel like people like us, young Catholics online, are stuck in echo chambers. And while, if we went out of those echo chambers, we'd... Whoops, just kicked the table. While we'd undoubtedly obliterate 90% of the people that we're dealing with because they're just not philosophically educated and the civil religion is based on emotions more than reason, I don't think it's healthy for ourselves, our own mental health. And so that's the main thing I got out of this. I got out of it that Catholic answers as being outmoded, or it's no, maybe not outmoded. It's disconnected, perhaps, from what's going on in the online Catholic culture, and that the attitude, or I got a reminder rather, that the attitude of online Catholics that are in their 20s, very much involved in the discourse sphere, is so myopic and uninvolved with the current civil religion that it's not really evangelizing as it should. And so that was really my kind of very cluttered thoughts. I don't know if it was any use, but if anybody's got any questions, please ask them. If they want to ask about specifics in the debate, because I sat and watched it, but I thought that this was a more important point than whether, I believe in young Earth creationism or evolution or whatever. Because, to be honest, my view on whether the Earth is young or old, I don't know. That's my view. In terms of evolution, I don't have an opinion, but Aristotelianism makes me tend away from it, maybe. I'm not sure, though. Pagan is anybody non-mainstream, conspiracy theorists, bigots, souls of the religious propagandas, just like modern media, one of my IRL friends was mocking trad caths on his Facebook a few months ago, and he was saying, everything's Gnostic, everything's Gnostic to these people, and I think he's kind of, I mean, it's kind of right. Not everything is Gnosticism, and we are surrounded by, perhaps, I don't know if I'd say we're surrounded by Gnostic tendencies, but what irritates me is that you say that the society is composed of this new paganism, and it is, but there's no specificity to it. We don't know exactly what these people hold. We don't know the exact trends in what they believe. We don't know any of these things, and we don't deal with them. You won't believe who the closest person to dealing with this all is. It's Jay Dyer. Jay Dyer, out of all... Actually, maybe Bishop Barron does it to some extent as well. But, Jay Dyer especially. He is somebody who, for all of his faults, and believe me, I don't agree with his theology, and he has a lot of problems, but he has a way of approaching the culture that is better than the way that we're doing it. As much as our little channels do all of our theology very well, and I mean, you look at someone like Michael Lofton, right? Someone who is clearly extremely educated. What do? They just repeat facts, and this works for a lot of people. It works for me. I love it, but the vast majority of people aren't like that, and it will never reach outside of these very small online religious groups, people who are extreme, who maybe not extreme, but like very serious about their faith. But if we want to change the society to the point where we're no longer permitting what we see, then we have to appeal to those that are in the society and in the civil religion. And I don't see that happening. And like Jay has done, has at least attempted it. I don't know how successful he's been. And another one who's attempted it as well, Bishop Barron. Like, people like dogpile on Bishop Barron, but I think aside from a couple of slips, I think he's doing the right thing. He's not mucking around. He's not, he's not doing silly things, right? He's presenting the reason of Aquinas, which is something which is necessary, right? Like, you can prove God from reason. We have to hold this not only because of Vatican I, but just because it's simply true. We can do this. But most people, a lot of people, don't care about ontological arguments or contingency arguments. And watching all of these Catholic apologists or Christian apologists fight the same battles over and over again with the same atheists, right? It's needed for some people. Maybe a minority of the population, I'll say. I don't want to put a number on it. But the vast majority of people don't need that. And this is actually something that came out of the synod that I was doing at my church. People are interested in the spiritual teaching. Like, you want to know what the two biggest, what like the large channels are like on YouTube? A lot of them are self-improvement. A lot of them are people who are looking for getting better, but they don't understand what getting better is. They don't understand who they are. They have a lot of assumptions about the world which are false. And we have all of these things in Catholicism. And instead of going, hey, guy who watches Jordan Peterson, and I mean, granted, there are some people who've done this, right? But like, I'm speaking in like general online communities, right? Instead of going, hey, you who watches Jordan Peterson or Thomas Frank or Ali Abdal or you name it, right? Instead of going, here's what you're missing, like, rather than them talking about their schedules and their improvement tools and stuff like that and what you're feeling when you're in a slump, like, we could be doing that and we could be doing it better than them because we have a superior tradition. Like, these guys, they've read self-improvement books written by people who are at best operating on a Enlightenment mindset. We have 2,000 years. We have 4,000 years of tradition and texts, to work on. And we have the benefit of, understanding that there is a God. We understand that the purpose of life is that God. And we know from our traditions how to reach that. Not through our own works, but through divine grace. And if we could only present this to these people, if only we could do that, then I think we'd have a lot of converts. Because I don't know how hard it would be or easy to be to convert these people. I've heard Hassan say from personal experience that these people are pretty easy to convert. Certainly easier than mucking around with, like all manner. I don't actually want to say any particular group because I don't know. But I think it's worth a shot. But a warning as well, because this is something that I've been thinking about as well. Because I've, of course, thought of doing this exact thing. I have a feeling that if you are unprepared for it, you will end up getting poisoned by their ideology. Like, a lot of these people are like self-improvement, I will improve me. Right? It's Pelagianism, in a way. Although they don't believe in, like, a temporal salvation necessarily. Like, a lot of these people, they believe in all kinds of weird doctrines, and if you're not prepared, not only intellectually, but also spiritually, this is something that is underplayed, then they're going to chew you up and spit you out. Like, I know of a guy that tried to evangelize to a certain group of people and he ended up joining them. So, you have to be aware of that as well. And with that, if there's anybody else who has any other questions, I'll give you like a minute to post them before I head off, because I feel like I'm out of my spiel a little bit. This was just kind of like a rant, I guess. I suppose it let you know that I'm still alive. So I am actually doing the stream tomorrow on Seraphim Rose's takes on Saint Francis of Assisi, but we'll see. Baron did did good for me reverting. Just his attitude helped a lot. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I like Baron a lot. He's grown on me in a way. I truly believe we are in a creationist world. I don't know what you mean, Dragon. Alright. Anyway, fellas, I'll see you guys later. If there's no other questions, thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.